Boop. Okay, let's find the domain and the range of the function sine of theta of a unit circle. Of a unit circle. Okay, so let me write that unit circle. I know that's not a unit circle, but just pretend with me. Um, so yeah, we have our unit circle, and I'm gonna write a graph for the um, sine function. Okay, this will be the graph. This axis, that's usually the y. Well, it is the y-axis. You can call it the y-axis. We're gonna call it the sine of theta axis, and we're gonna be measuring theta radians. So the angle in radians. Okay. So let's get cracking. Let's grab a graph. Now let's do a table. So this will be the radians. This will be the angle in radians right here, theta, and this is our output. Sine of theta. So let's say when theta is equal to 0, what's the value of sine of theta when theta is equal to 0? Well, with our unit circle, the angle would be just 0, just be this. So this right here will be our sine of theta, that y, the y point of this, which will be just 0. So that will be 0. Now, what about at 90 degrees, at pi over 2? At pi over 2, which is about right here, this angle right here, the sine of theta will be this point on the circle, which is 1, because it's a unit circle, so this is just going to be 1. So sine of theta, pi over 2, is 1. Now what about 2 pi over 2? So from here all the way to right here, which is 180 degrees, or you could just say pi, that is going to be equal to this intersection right here, which is 0, because the y-axis on this would be 0, since sine is just equal to the y-axis at the intersection point of that angle with the unit circle. Okay, now what about 3 pi over 2, which is 390 degrees? So it'll be right here. Now the intersection point on the y-axis with this will be -1, because it's a unit circle, which has a radius of just 1. So this of 3 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2 is equal to -1. Okay, now what about 2 pi over 2? Well, not 2 pi over 2, that's just half. 4 pi over 2, which is just 2 pi, which is from here to here to here to here. So it's 360 degrees, which is just, again, 0. So 2 over pi is 2 pi is 0. Now let's graph this. Let us put these points 0. We have 0 right here. There's one right here. And then let's put pi over 2 right here. This is pi over 2, which is the 90 degrees. Pi over 2, and then let's put pi, and let's put 3 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, and then let's put 2 pi. 2, remove this right here, 2 pi. Okay, these are our points. Now, we don't have anything more than -1 and 1, so I'm going to put -1 right here and 1 right here. So the first at 0 is 0. So we start right here at 0. The next at pi over 2, this point, we get 1. So at this point, we get 1. And then At pi, we get 0 again. So we get 0. And then at 3 pi over 2, we get negative 1. 3 pi over 2, we get negative 1. And then at 2 pi, we get 0. So if I were to connect the dots, it would look something, I messed off by a little bit. This graph is not perfect, sadly. It would look something like this. And if I were to keep going, it would keep going in this shape. It would look like a wave. And if I were to go backwards, if I were to go to the negative radians, going in this direction by negative pi over 2, if I were to go negative pi over 2, if I go to negative pi over 2, let's say this was negative pi over 2, that's terrible, then you'd get the same thing right here. You get a negative 1 right here. You get a negative 1 because that's right here. This is negative 1. This would be negative pi over 2. Since positive pi over 2 is right here, this would be negative pi over 2. And yeah, so we get this wave-like thing. We get a wave, and this is how trigonometry goes from triangles to waves. This is how it happens. This is the way it happens. Anyways, what is the domain of this? What is the domain of this function? Well, we can see that it clearly go from negative to positive and all the way around. So the domain, which is all the x values or all the input values that are possible, is all the real numbers. Domain is all real numbers. And the range, which is all the y values it can inhabit, all the possible y outputs that you can get, is going to be only from 1 to negative 1, because that's only the possible things that we can go, because that's what the unit circle definition is. It has a radius of 1, and sine is equal to the y on which that intersects. The angle intersects with the circle. So the range will just be from negative 1. Wait, oops. The range is just from negative 1 or to 1. What's that? Okay, sane's cool.